So I'm Dan Piper. I am the founder and managing director of Setekh Solutions. I have 15 plus years experience in the BPO contact center operational strategy and leadership space. And I have operated up to level of global VP and head of continuous improvement previously. But predominantly I'm an operational guy through and through. That being said, I started Setekh Solutions because I saw the same mistakes being made repeatedly across many, many businesses. That's the beauty of working in BPO previously. I've experienced thousands upon thousands of different client interactions, seen very, very different business models and operating models. Yet, despite the differences, they all make the exact same mistakes and they all experience the exact same challenges. My mission with Setekh Solutions is to make things easier for customers, employees, and leaders. What I'm able to solve is transforming people's mindsets. Companies which have been previously obsessed with metrics over performance, leaders which have been managing processes and not enabling people, and businesses throwing tech at broken processes. I wanted to create a business that actually fixes problems, not just another consultancy with nice PowerPoints stating the obvious for people. So that, in a nutshell, is what Setekh Solutions is all about.
I want to talk a little bit about the reality of CX today, because my own personal opinion is not getting better, it's getting worse. Businesses have invested billions in CX, yet customer experience is declining. More and more companies have invested in CX directors and people who are supposedly dedicated to the making improvements to their own particular business customer experience. Yet customers that I speak to and friends and family even don't talk about positive CX in the same light that they used to perhaps 10 years ago. In actual fact, that they're more inclined to start discussing about CX in a negative way. And that's what I have seen over the past few years specifically. Now, customers are not getting faster resolutions. They seem to be just being bounced between channels. There are some key statistics that focus on this really, really well. So taking a perspective of from the year 2004 up until 2023, first call resolution actually dropped from 78% in 2004 to 73% in 2023. Now, with all of the investments in CX and all of the investments in technology, why is it seen a 5-point drop? What I've also seen is wait times have doubled. So now, on average, there's 41 plus second wait time versus a 16-second wait time in 2004. Why is because customers don't want to wait online to be answered. It's just not something that they want to do. What I'm also seeing is call durations increasing from 286 seconds in 2010 to 441 seconds in 2023. Now, you can potentially speak of the increase being down to removing more simplistic call types. That's the example everyone jumps to straight away. Perfect example being store opening times. Back a few years ago, people might have put a call into a company to find out what time they were open from until. They don't do that anymore because IVRs have become more sophisticated in time, and people are now able to automate those sorts of calls and those sorts of responses because they were essentially non-value add interactions. But that being said, we can't put all of the blame on removing those more simplistic calls and contacts. Repeat calls is another area of discussion because Nobody likes having to call back because their initial problem was not resolved. Yet, up to 40% of customers that have to call contact centers or make contact to companies claim to have to call back to follow up on that action. Another stat, 9.1% of customers abandon calls due to excessive wait times. Now, this is a stark change because that is around 100% higher than previous targets, where targets for abandoned calls used to be set between the limits of 4 and 5% on average. Why has it doubled? Why are customers happy? So let's talk about CX today. I have a controversial opinion. I don't think it's getting better. I think it's getting worse. Businesses have invested billions in CX, yet customer experience is declining. Customers aren't necessarily getting faster or better resolutions, but they are getting bounced around between channels. There are some key stats also to call out here. First call resolution, or FCR, has actually dropped from 78% in 2004 down to 73% in 2023. Now, that might not seem like much of a drop, 5%, but given all of the millions of pounds worth of investment in CX and CX related roles, you would not expect to see a drop at all. You would expect to see an improvement. Average wait times have also doubled, now 41 seconds plus versus 16 seconds in 2004. Why has it doubled? Clearly, there are some questions still to be answered. Call durations are increasing also, from 286 seconds on average in 2010 to 441 seconds in 2023. This is an important call out. We do need to recognize that certain call types have been eliminated from the equation now due to automated responses being made available to customers to improve the journey, but that can't go towards the overall increase, which is almost 100% increase. 40% of customers now have to call back because their issues weren't resolved. That's a stark stat, and it's one that should really be avoided, because essentially, if people were actually focused more on outcome and owning the customer issues, you wouldn't have to see that degree of customers having to call back. 9.1% of customers abandon calls due to excessive wait times. I remember not so long ago where BPO targets for abandoned calls used to sit between the region of 4 and 5%. So why is it that 9.1% of customers abandon due to excessive wait times? What about that CX investment? What's happening with it? Now, despite all of the AI, automation, and investment, I don't think anyone can honestly say customer experience is better than it was 10 years ago. There's more and more subjective reasons for why we need to improve customer experience. And there's more and more pieces of technology emerging on the market, absolutely guaranteeing and promising improvements to CX. Yet, strangely, when you come back to the data, it doesn't seem to be the case. And customer confidence around businesses owning and actually resolving their issues seems to be falling. This is a debate. Clearly, it's something that's going to be a little bit sensitive to some people, but I think ultimately we need to start recognizing this. There are foundations that need to be fixed first and foremost before we start jumping on the CX technology bandwagon. Of course, technology is going to absolutely change the world in terms of what our expectations and capabilities are all about and what we're able to deliver. But essentially, if we're not getting the basics right and we're not managing customers' expectations properly right from the onset, I don't see CX evolving to the state that we're all basically convincing ourselves that it's going to be.
So customer experience is a very big topic of discussion nowadays. Companies are investing thousands upon thousands, millions upon millions of pounds into customer experience. And it's very much become an industry buzzword, buzz term, specifically around CX. It is what many people know it about. I'm of a different point of view around CX, right? Because the reality of CX today, to me, isn't getting better, it's getting worse. And considering that businesses have invested billions in their CX, yet customer experience is declining, customers aren't getting faster resolutions. They're bouncing around between channels. But we've got new roles that have been created out of CX, and they do differ depending on the company that you interact with. There are some people that are talking about CX in terms of an ability to sell CX solutions to companies. But then you've got other companies which are very much focusing CX around just a reinvented term for customer service. That being said, I do actually know some key stats around CX specifically. So the interesting thing is first call resolution rates, or FCR, has dropped from 78% in 2004 to 73% in 2023. Now, that might not seem like a big drop, but considering it's 21 years ago when we saw first call resolution rates at 78%, you would expect that first call resolution would actually improve by the time we get to 2023. Now, clearly, we're now in 2025, but that being said, it hasn't got that much better. I can talk as a consumer myself. There are very few instances whereby I genuinely feel that I have had a first contact resolution or a first call resolution from a company. Now, other stats around this very similar vein. Average wait times have doubled. Now they're at 41 seconds plus versus 16 seconds in 2004. Call duration times are increasing from 286 seconds in 2010 to 441 seconds in 2023. Now, call durations, there might be a reason for, because clearly many companies are actually looking to remove some of the call types from the equation, which don't take that long and don't take much effort to resolve, right? So you've got the example of store opening times. Back in the day, someone might have called a contact center to ask what time they're open from and to. Nowadays, there are IVR options which can strip out those queries by providing an automated response to that call type, which can suggest that we're seeing fewer of those low average call durations, pushing AHT up more. But that being said, I think that there's more to this than meets the eye. 40% of customers now have to call back because their issues wasn't resolved. 40% of all customers have had an instance whereby they felt that they had to call back because the company they chose to contact did not resolve their issue. That is absolutely crazy considering all of the investment in customer experience and technology. Another stat, which is very, very interesting, and I can talk from my own personal experience of this. Back in the day, and it's not too long ago, let's say 10 years, abandon rate targets were probably sitting in and around 4 to 5%. Yet strangely, 9.1% of customers abandon calls due to excessive wait times. Why is that more than doubled in certain cases since over the last 10, 20 years? It just doesn't make sense considering the investment. Now, despite all of that AI, automation, and investment, I don't think anyone can honestly say customer experience is better than it was 10 years ago. Because from everything that I have known about contact centers and experienced over the 15 years that I've been focused in, I'm not getting a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling inside that more and more companies are getting things right. In actual fact, I'm getting the sense that more and more companies are getting things wrong. So from my experience in contact centers over 15 years, but it's not just contact centers, there are some pretty consistent things that companies get wrong. They're making mistakes every single day in the way that they manage performance and effectiveness and efficiency in their business. The main one for me is I seem to recognize more and more companies are becoming obsessed with metrics. Every company has to have metrics, but metrics are a leadership marker. It's a management marker. Leaders need metrics to see where they are going wrong, what they're doing right. But the mistake, which I believe many businesses are making at the moment, is they're pushing their metrics obsession far too far down the chain. So then their metrics obsession starts having a material impact on the people that on the ground who are arguably doing the hardest job interacting with customers. They're thinking that they have to get their quality score up. They have to reduce their average handle time. They have to increase their first contact resolution. And that businesses are chasing these KPIs instead of actually enabling and delivering real outcomes. Now, you can tell an agent that they have to reduce their AHT, but unless you tell them how they can reduce their AHT by providing proper, effective coaching, which is going to have a material impact on bringing that AHT down, they're going to do it in the wrong way. If they don't understand the mechanisms that they have to put in place in order to deliver what you've asked them to do, which is to reduce their AHT, all they're going to do is do it in the wrong places, because they're going to essentially make knee-jerk reactions rather than focusing on what the true outcome is, why we need to reduce AHT. You don't necessarily need to reduce AHT. You need to control AHT within reasonable thresholds in order to provide better staffing balance, for example. That's the metrics obsession. That's why leaders want these KPIs managed. It's got nothing to do with the fact that the customer doesn't necessarily want to be on the phone for an extended period of time. It's to ensure that staffing profiles get fixed and more predictable, because obviously AHT variants will cause disruption in that setting, and it will make service levels much more difficult to predict. Another thing around metrics obsession, self-service is not working all of the time in a lot of cases. 62% of customers try online channels and they still end up calling because the self-service focus is not necessarily aligned to what the outcome the customer is looking for. What we often find here is these aren't really self-service options to improve the customer outcome. It's more contact deflection. They're just trying, businesses nowadays are trying to stop those contacts coming in altogether, but they're not truly understanding why customers want to make contact in the first place. Are these self-service channels built properly so that they cater for all of the customers that are trying to use the service? Because if they're not, then you might have to start asking customers a little bit more around what drove them to call in the first place. Is there a mechanism to improve that self-service option? AI and tech, without fixing the fundamentals, the absolute basics, companies are layering automation onto broken processes in some cases, in a lot of cases. There is this belief out there that tech is going to fix all customers' problems. The tech companies have done a great job to sell their wares and to essentially say, we're going to fix every single customer challenge out there. Unfortunately, the tech companies that are pushing this rhetoric are not necessarily understanding the true challenges that customers are actually facing today. I know that there are many, many companies out there, many big brands are thinking, well, these tech companies have invested billions of pounds, billions of dollars into this tech. They can't be wrong. And many of these companies are looking for quick fixes to essentially address many of the challenges that their own customers are talking about. But because they don't know how to fix their problems, they're invariably moving towards the tech solution. And what I'm finding is leadership gaps, managers tracking performance instead of enabling it. If the leader does not know what action their staff members need to take in order to gravitate to more successful outcomes, moving the dial to more successful outcomes, a lot of the time, it's all too easy to default to metrics. By doing that, they think that they're passing the responsibility down to the employee to take ownership and responsibility for their own performance, which can be said. You do want people to take ownership and responsibility for their own performance. But unfortunately, it comes back down to what I said right at the beginning. If the employee does not know how to deliver that metric improvement with tangible action or items, they are going to fail. All too often, I see countless performance reviews, and let's just take any contact center, right? And you map out all of their performance over the course of a 12, 13-month period. Let's take AHT as an example. And you put a trend line against all of those monthly AHT markers. I can almost guarantee that performance will be flatlined. It won't go up. It won't go down. There will be blips, clearly, of where you have some months where you have higher and lower performance than others. But invariably, the trend line will be flat, or it will be a very slight incline to the increase or the decrease. Now, considering all of that performance that we will be able to see over that period, and all of the coaching that is supposedly happening within those companies, why isn't it moving the dial? The reason why it's not moving the dial is because the employees, who are essentially the ones that are doing the performance, they are performing, they are not addressing the right areas to have a meaningful and impactful impact on the overall performance of that line of business, that function. And that is a harsh reality. And if there are companies out there that can see flatlined performance, little to no improvement on anything, you have to ask yourself, is that coaching effective? Are you focusing on the right things? Because for me, if I was a leader and I knew that my performance had to go in a particular direction, yet when I mapped performance out over a course of a longer period of time and I saw flatline performance, that I would be instantly looking at that scenario and starting to question how effective we were and looking to reinvent ourselves in order to put it right. So my call out here is AI isn't necessarily the problem. Bad implementation is the problem. It should be helping agents, not making life harder for them or replacing them outright. Essentially, every business is going to require still some degree of human interaction, at least over the next 10 to 15 years. Because let's be honest, AI is very much in its infancy still. And companies are still layering technology solutions on top of broken processes in the first place, which is only compounding their issues, not making it better. So let's just circle back to what I asked at the beginning. Can we honestly say customer experience is better than it was 10 years ago? One thing businesses need to do today is to fix the basics before adding complexity. Leaders need to challenge outdated thinking and rethink performance management. Driving metrics is not going to deliver you the output and the successes that you want for your business. Behavioral driven action is what will ultimately lead to natural and sustained positive performance within your organization. What leaders also need to do is not necessarily jump on the bandwagon too quickly and copy what every other company is doing. Technology absolutely plays a part in contact center delivery and performance. It absolutely will deliver improvements to customer and employee outcomes, but only if it's done and executed in the right way. What businesses need to recognize is where are the areas, where are the parts of the process where it is failing? Let's just look at service levels in general. Are customers being answered on service lines as quickly as they are expecting to be answered? What's driving that? What are calls handled in an effective and efficient way? Is the variance of performance of employees managed and controlled? And if it's not, what are the underlying factors for that? Is it because we're pushing far too much as leaders on the metric delivery? Or is it because we're not enabling or giving our employee base enough tools to be able to manage these outcomes naturally by coaching them properly? If I was to use a sporting analogy, no tennis player ever got coached by being told, win more games. So why do we think that an agent is going to necessarily be able to reduce their average handle time by just saying, reduce your average handle time? In actual fact, sporting analogies are really quite great because you also wouldn't go to a footballer and say, score more goals, right? There's a reason why sports people train relentlessly. You only see them, obviously, play in their big games when they're televised and all of that sort of thing. However, behind the scenes, there is an awful lot of focus, an awful lot of training, an awful lot of coaching that goes into building their proficiency in their chosen discipline and being consistent. That's the challenge. If you are consistent with the way that you coach, that is focused on behavioral change, you will deliver sustainable performance that adds value to business outcomes. So for me, let's stop complicating things. Let's start making it easier for employees, for leaders, and for customers by being consistent and focusing on the right things rather than taking a scattergun approach by implementing technology, which your business might not necessarily be ready for at that moment in time. So given all of the challenges that the contact center or CX customer service industry is facing at the moment, given the fact that there are so many companies that are focused very much on metric-based coaching, metric-based performance management, what I think needs to change is we need to have a fundamental rethink of what is driving or maintaining our mediocre performance. My own personal philosophy is why are we happy sitting in a pool of mediocrity when we could be elevating our performance and actually setting the bar for other companies to follow. That's where Setekh Solutions really comes in, because for me, I want to work with businesses that are not happy with mediocrity in their day to day. I want companies to recognize that, as Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over and over again, expecting different results. So let's shift the mindset and move from a more metrics based coaching methodology to behavior driven leadership, which essentially is going to drive improvement holistically across everything without having to drive metrics, almost organic, like an osmosis effect, to improve performance naturally. And the way that it should be packaged is businesses need to work with me to fix their operational bottlenecks before throwing new technology in. All that you will be doing otherwise is making the situation worse, creating more and more layers that you will have to peel back and ultimately still have to fix beneath the technology. Now, for me as well, AI should human service, not replace it. Performance management should focus on sustainable improvement, not short-term fixes, knee-jerk reactions. Because from what I've seen in my experience, I see a lot of get-rich-quick schemes, lots of knee-jerk reactions, lots of, well, if we fix this, it will fix the problem. It won't. Fundamental basics, building on broken foundations is never going to lead to sustainable and sustained performance. It's just never going to work. Every single business that I've worked with, whereby they've had broken processes in place to begin with, they have never succeeded by overlaying technology layer. It's never worked. The best businesses today aren't the ones with the most tech. They're the ones that make it easiest for customers and employees to succeed. Look at that new CRM system that companies bring in. Big businesses will talk about the fact they need more data, they need more analysis, they need things to tell the executive teams exactly what's working in the business. So to do that, we're going to put a nice shiny CRM solution in the mix. Now, the people that are putting that CRM solution in place aren't necessarily thinking about the employee experience and how the employee is going to be using that system. Many businesses will just be looking for what they want to get out of it. What dispositions are we going to be able to report on? And what data do we need to drive our business? Now, some companies, unfortunately, build their CRM systems incorrectly, and they make it almost impossible to use for the frontline agent. Now, many AHT challenges that I've seen haven't been generated as a result of bad people at all, but they have been generated from bad systems. What Setekh Solutions can do is a complete analysis and review over how systems are built to enable people performance. Because sometimes you're just not aware of the fact that systems can be getting in the way of good performance. When businesses introduce new technology, that's only the start of the journey. The employee adoption of that technology and the usability of that technology and the refinement of that technology is an essential part of what really also needs to change. There are very many businesses out there that think that it's a one and done approach to implement something which they have firmly committed to their boards that is going to deliver absolute fundamental progress on performance, and then it doesn't. Now, sometimes what then happens is the technology gets shelved or parked, or you move on to your next initiative. The issue isn't necessarily the technology. It's the way that this technology has been implemented, which is the issue. The change hasn't been managed. The workforce haven't been engaged. The workforce haven't been involved in the process. That could very well be one of the main stumbling blocks towards sustainable success.